All right, in this lesson, we're still talking about homeostasis. We're going to be a little bit more specific with what we are doing here, and we're going to talk about how the body corrects things using negative and positive feedback mechanisms. Now, you don't necessarily, according to the syllabus, need to understand positive feedback mechanisms, but they're in really good contrast to negative. So we recap, we're talking about the stimulus response model. We've got external stimulus changes, so they're causing some kind of disturbance in the body based on the normal planned functioning of how our systems work. Your body has to detect what's going on. It's going to try and correct it so it can bring it back to that normal sort of dynamic equilibrium fluctuation up and down. So to do this, the nervous system and the endocrine system are the main systems that are working to do those corrections. Now, we're talking specifically about the stimulus response model, and in that situation there are two main mechanisms whereby the body tries to correct itself. Positive and negative feedback mechanisms provide that response, that kind of domino effect on what's going on. So regardless, we're still looking at that idea that some kind of stimulus has occurred. Our body, whether it's an internal or an external receptor, has to notice it. It has to send that information to the control center, which in this case is the brain or the central nervous system, and then it is going to cause some kind of change. And it's going to do that by sending another message to an effector. It might be a gland, it might be a nerve, a muscle, whatever. And then there is going to be a response. That response could be localized in one specific area of your body, or it could be a whole systematic change. So our two main types of response here. We're going to start with negative feedback loops. That's the one we really need to understand. So what this is trying to do is keep internal environment as stable as possible, that idea of that general up-down fluctuations, and we use the term dynamic equilibrium all the time. So think about it like having an air conditioner on the wall. Sometimes they're actually quite responsive. If their temperature goes up too high, they're trying to bring it back. If it lowers too much, they're trying to bring it back to that central point as well. Now, positive feedback loops are a little bit counterintuitive. They're kind of a way to escalate a response to keep going up the same path. So it pushes the internal environment to keep escalating. So doing what you're doing already, but keep going, keep going, keep going. So it's an amplification of an initial response. So if we look at negative feedback mechanisms first, this is the reverse. It's trying to basically enact the reverse of whatever change has happened. It's trying to flip it. But that ebb and flow of up, down, around a central kind of normal point is what it's aiming to do. So a change is detected by a receptor, an effector is activated to induce some kind of opposite effect, and that's promoting that equilibrium back to the center. Thermoregulation, so if your body temperature changes, you need mechanisms to induce some kind of normal level again. Thermoregulation is a really big one for talking about negative feedback mechanisms. You can also talk about blood sugar regulation, you can talk about water and salt balance as well, and that's what we're going to get into. So if we're looking at temperature here, you can say, hey, the body temperature is going to increase around here. Our body needs to enact these effectors to do these methods to cool ourselves down, like sweating, and then hopefully our body temperature will decrease. If it goes the other way and we've actually gotten too cold, our body will enact another set of mechanisms and then it will increase. So that's that ebb and flow. Positive feedback mechanisms, on the other hand, are kind of like a vicious cycle. So it's an escalation, it's an amplification of a response. And the problem with this is they're really hard to stop, because once you start amplification, it's really hard to just make it stop happening completely. So the output of the original reaction is actually enhancing the stimulus. Hey, do more of that. Kind of like when you scratch a mozzie bite and it feels really good, so you keep on scratching and scratching. So the pattern of behavior looks like this. Over time, whatever is going to happen is going to keep going up and up and up, right? This is a positive style feedback mechanism graph. Now, some really good examples of this are bananas and ethylene. So if you put bananas in your fruit bowl, they actually start to ripen, and ripening fruit produces ethylene. And that more ethylene that comes out actually prompts the other fruits to ripen, which produces more ethylene, which produces more ripe bananas, and that's why your bananas go really brown really quickly if they are together. Another example of this in your body is fever. So the fever starts to, your body heats up as your body is fighting some kind of disease. that baseline metabolic rate, those chemical reactions are happening more and more, and therefore you're actually producing more heat, and then the fever keeps rising and rising and rising. Another one in your body is clotting, so trying to have a clotting pathway to stop you bleeding out. I mentioned mozzie bites before. Also, things like uterine contractions when you're having a baby. One thing leads to another, and it keeps amplifying. In terms of a good example of a positive feedback mechanism, producing breast milk is a really good example. So your body has to know, firstly, how to start preparing to feed its young, and it has this hormone called prolactin, and it's produced in the breast tissue to allow for milk to be produced. So when you're pregnant, your prolactin starts to increase, and it does have a flow-on effect with all the other hormones that are involved in this process. Once you actually have the baby, the progesterone in your system drops, and that actually pushes the prolactin up really, really high, because it says, hey, you've had the baby, now you need to feed it. So once the breastfeeding starts, it's like a supply and demand thing. If there is a demand for it, the body says, hey, we need to keep producing milk. So that prolactin keeps going and going. The problem is stopping milk production, because your body keeps going, well, we need it, we're going to keep making it. It can be really slow and painful training the body to say, hey, we don't need this anymore, please stop producing it. So in terms of a positive feedback loop, yeah, there's equilibrium at the beginning, but it's going to completely get out of whack. Eventually, once that stimulus is removed though, there is going to be equilibrium restored. But in our negative feedback loop, we're trying to follow a bit more of a straight line path so that we are staying around that equilibrium. Now, in homeostasis, metabolism plays an important role, right? It's the sum total of all the chemical reactions in our body, and we've seen these before. We've seen this anabolism and catabolism as well. One of them is building things up, the other one is breaking things down. So when we're talking about homeostatic mechanisms or how the body maintains equilibrium, it's all related to these reactions that are occurring in cells and systems, okay? So we've got to keep remembering that. If we understand that the optimum environment for enzymes are, pretty narrow, and we get out of whack with them, then our metabolic activity can drop. It's all going to center around our enzymes, like most things in our body. So our body tries to use corrective mechanisms to make sure that the pH or the temperature or whatever is good and, ideal for that particular enzyme to do its job. And multiple systems might be needed to manage some kind of correction in this situation. If correction is required, we know that that enzyme activity is probably going to be less than ideal, and that can cause problems. So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. The metabolism needs the enzymes, but the enzymes needs the systems in place there to maintain those optimal conditions for them to work. Now, correcting mechanisms in our body, the efficiency of them actually relies on how quickly and effectively the organism can get back to that normal range. So our metabolic rate is the speed at which those chemical reactions are actually occurring. How far away from the norm we're straying here, right? We could be Brisbane winter cold and be cold, or we could have hypothermia. They're very, very different things. And what effector is being used? Is it a muscle? Is it the nervous system? Is it a hormone? Which will all have different speeds and work at different rates to correct some mechanism in the body. So again, still kind of an overview, lots in here and lots of practice looking at control diagrams as well.